Welcome. I'm very happy to have you here watching this videotape of an interview with the recently retired ambassador to the Vatican from the United States, Dr. Miguel Diaz, who is here with me and will be answering a number of questions. We are delighted to have him. He's a guest of the Institute, and he is a person who has much to say. Ambassador Diaz, again, thank you for being here. I'd like to begin the interview with a question that I think was probably one that was your own when you got the call and the approval to become that ambassador. And it's this: what was it like for you and your wife, Marion, who's a professor of theology as well as you are, and your 4 children, to leave the quiet area of Minnesota, St. John's University, and go to the big metropolis of Rome in a totally new role? What was that like for you?
It was quite an adventure. We described it as being uprooted for the sake of mission, for the sake of service, from, as you said, a very small town, Collegeville, to an international city, Rome, Italy. And then, of course, the adjustment began, and the first 6 months were very difficult for the kids as they experienced culture shock in light of their lived experience in this international city. And so, in fact, we had to change schools for them after 6 months to another school where they could have a better chance at adjusting to such a drastic shift.
Mm-hmm. You have a great gift with languages. You're fluent in Spanish, you're fluent in Italian, you're fluent in French. You have a great grasp of the English language. You read several languages besides those. How much of an advantage was that for you in your role as an ambassador living in Rome?
I think it was a wonderful tool to have, again and again over the first few months as ambassador to the Holy See in Rome. I would get comments like, "Ma questo non è possibile, l'ambasciatore americano parla italiano." This is impossible. The American ambassador speaks Italian. And with time, I came to the conclusion that in those words, it wasn't just the fact that I spoke Italian. It was the way that the language itself created a bridge to enable conversation, to enable relationships, to enable the kind of opening of one person to another that is so important in the work of diplomacy.
Not only languages, but you also bring a very unusual background as a person with a doctorate in theology, your wife as well. To my knowledge, I don't know that there has ever been any ambassador, maybe not just the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican, but any ambassador with a PhD in theology. If the languages were a real facility, what about that background? How did that play out?
In De Doctrina Christiana, St. Augustine gives us the wonderful words that it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And it's quite a pedagogy. And just like languages, theology was a tool that enabled me to understand the how of saying things. And so it really created a bridge to engage in conversation with a number of people. It created a way for me to understand where Vatican foreign policy was the roots of the thinking and the doing of Vatican policy. And so it really was a wonderful, I think, tool to have and to connect with people, especially at that post, both in terms of my ability to understand and to execute U.S. foreign policy, as well as to engage numerous persons, both in private conversation, as well as in translating that theology into words that could be commonly understood, both in terms of my everyday doing at the embassy, and as well as with respect to the State Department.
Let Ambassador, you have a background in theology. You're a devout Catholic. We know that the Obama administration, which you represented, has run into a few difficulties with the Catholic Church on a number of issues. How did you handle that give and take as you were fulfilling your role as ambassador?
You know, Father Heft, one of the things that I've always, from the beginning, tried to underscore is the fact that all American ambassadors are confirmed by the U.S. Senate and represent the President in the United States with respect to U.S. foreign policy. And that it's almost impossible for any American ambassador to find 100% convergence between the foreign policy of the United States and that other sovereign state that they are, ambassador to. The second thing is that the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See is, of course, no different than any other ambassador with respect to that U.S. foreign policy and representing U.S. foreign policy. And moreover, the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See neither has to be Catholic, nor does he or she represent the Catholic Church, nor the Bishops' Conference, nor Catholic theology. Now, of course, in me there was both the tradition of the fact that I was a theologian and the fact that I was, the U.S. ambassador. But again, what I try to do is to use the theological background as a way to help represent U.S. foreign policy, at all times and whenever possible. And of course, whenever tensions were present and continue to be present in the United States between, our government and, the leadership of the church, those were personally times of pain for me, but they did not prevent me from executing the job that I was asked to do by the President of the United States.
I don't know if you've ever thought of yourself as bicultural. I mean, in a sense, you born in Cuba, you carry that Hispanic dimension of your life, but at the same time, very much acclimated to parts of the Anglo world and so on. So you go to Rome already with this kind of internalized dimension of two cultures, and you encounter there a global church. People often have the illusion that Rome is very monochrome. It's highly diverse, as is the Vatican itself. So what did you learn about the global church? And maybe a second part of the question would be, from what you have learned, is it any clearer to you as to what the American Catholic Church might contribute to that global church?
Yeah. Now, I grew up in Miami. As a Cuban American, there's an expression that is oftentimes offered with respect to the Cuban American experience, that Cuban Americans live life on the hyphen, embracing both the Cuban and the American dimensions, embracing both the beans and the rice as well as the turkey. And so I feel that experience of living in between worlds, languages, peoples, prepared me very well for the diplomatic charge that I was asked to assume. And of course opened me up. I've always believed that experience has opened me up to the other and his or her otherness. Going to Rome was an incredible opportunity to give and to receive from the Catholicity of peoples, Catholicity with a little c, from that world community, global community that increasingly is interdependent and interconnected. And so, as a teacher, I've always used the example of standing in the landscape. And oftentimes I bring into the room or into the classroom an object, and I, separate the students into different areas in the room, and I ask them to describe the object. I'm not changing the object is not changing, it's just their angle of perception that is changing. And they inevitably will see things, depending upon where they stand on that landscape in that room, that others will not see. And so, being a diplomat really helped me to see issues and debates and questions of both the church and society from different angles of vision. At the same time, given our angle, our American angle of vision, it was also a wonderful way to share with others the great American tradition and foundation that continues and project, I would say, that continues to live up to that great American principle, e pluribus unum, out of many one. And so I find tremendous richness in the American landscape with respect to political, social, cultural, theological, religious dimensions that makes the United States almost like in fact, it's like a United Nations here, a community comprised of many immigrants and peoples from all over the world. And I think that that is the great richness that we have to constantly return to, that here in this land, we can receive and give to one another, and that other really has come from every corner of the world. And so, sharing that American identity with people from all over the world, and having the platform to do that was a wonderful, privilege.
There is a Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times. And it seems to me that you actually did your work as ambassador during some very interesting times, not just with the kind of enthusiasm, particularly in Europe and other countries with the election of President Obama, but you're also talking about the Arab Spring, a very complex kind of churning, powerful, talking about Israeli-Palestinian relationships and so on. How did those various events affect you and your work?
From day one, these have been very challenging years at the international front. Clearly, a global economic crisis in which peoples from all over the world are suffering significantly as a result of what is happening economically. The Pope has called it, the scandal of inequality. And so, seeing, the violence, the poverty, the relationship between violence and poverty, in the midst of this economic crisis was certainly something that caught my attention. We also had an earthquake in Haiti, in which I cooperated with Caritas Internationalis to provide immediate response to the people of Haiti. And that was only followed, later by another earthquake in Latin America, in Chile. And a number of other, the tsunamis. A number of other world natural disasters. So we had the natural, we had the economic, and then we had the social political. In the Middle East, throughout the Arab world, the growing concerns of religious minorities, including, and of course, very much the concern of Christians in the Middle East and their future as a result of the violence. The growing, what I would call one of the most challenging issues of our times. How is this human family going to constructively and creatively face and embrace human diversity? Europe is dealing with this issue as it faces immigrants that have been peoples that have been displaced as a result of natural and social, economic, and political conditions. And so these were all part of the of the challenges that were present during my tenure as ambassador. And there is no magic solution to any of them. There is no answer that one can give other than ongoing commitment and ongoing really work on behalf of this vineyard. So,
in the midst of all of these challenges, you worked very hard on a number of projects. What projects are you most proud of?
When I came into the State Department, the Secretary of State gave all of us as ambassadors a challenge. And she told us that she wanted U.S. foreign policy to be guided by the 3 L's. We were to listen to the other. We were to learn from the other. And we were to lead as a result of that listening and learning. So I took that seriously. We created in the embassy a number of diplomatic events or activities that would foster those 3 L's. So among the things that I'm proud of is, we created a series of conferences that I entitled Building Bridges. The first one was Building Bridges of Hope, in which we brought together Muslim, Christians, and Jews around 3 areas: conflict resolution, care of the environment, and economic justice. And we asked these world leaders, they were not just religious leaders, but leaders that came from those diverse religious traditions. We asked them to share success stories and to strategize in common possible ways of continuing the success. We did Building Bridges of Opportunity in light of the universal phenomenon of migration. This age has been called the age of migrations, whereby we cannot but face the fact that the human family is on the move, again as a result of various social, political, economic, and climate-related factors. So one of the aspects that I'm very proud of are these conferences that we sponsored at the international level. The second and third thing that I would say are tabletop diplomacy and behind-the-scenes diplomacy. The tabletop diplomacy included numerous conversations around table in my house, which was very targeted attempts to bring together very specific people and communities and agents and organizations around various issues, whether it was issues related to HIV/AIDS, whether it was issues related to women in society, whether it was issues related to poverty, religious freedom. But we invited specific persons and pontifical councils or pontifical institutions to participate in these conversations with the hope that we would link persons and communities and agents for the sake of the common good. The behind-the-scenes diplomacy, of course, were many conversations that they thought to achieve an objective with respect to U.S. foreign policy or with respect to advancing human rights or the common good of the human family. And then finally, the professor ambassador, and as a result of my background in religious studies, I quickly became very passionate about increasing literacy at the State Department with respect to the area of religion and society. And so when Secretary Clinton proposed 5 groups for engaging civil society, and one of those 5 groups that she proposed was on religion and foreign policy, I was one of the persons that was tapped to help lead some discussions, and I co-chaired and continue to co-chair the group on development and humanitarian assistance. And so we'll see where this group and this initiative goes under Secretary Kerry. But it has already produced some fruits insofar as we have introduced new aspects to existing courses in the Foreign Service Institute for Foreign Service officers that attempt to increase literacy when it comes to how religious agents can better help the United States achieve some of those goals that are common to both religious agents in the United States of America. And because, of course, religious institutions and religious groups like Catholic groups are present in corners of the world that the government oftentimes cannot reach, this ought to be and should be one of the partnerships that needs continual engagement and commitment.
Looking ahead, you have accepted a chaired position at the University of Dayton, a major Catholic university. The chaired position is Faith and Culture. What's your vision? What would you like to do there?
I believe I stand on the shoulders of giants. I think that the first person to hold that chair is speaking to me right now, and so I'm humbled by the fact that I'm stepping into some very difficult shoes to fill. But my vision is probably threefold. One is to actively engage the university community in an interdisciplinary way on questions of faith and culture, and to value the truths in the plural that emerge out of those various disciplines in the most Catholic way that one can do, following that very wise and Thomistic axiom that grace does not destroy nature, but completes and fulfills it. And so to build upon the truth, to assume those truths and to engage them, so that you can have a reasoned approach to faith, and faith can be tempered also by reason, and vice versa. Of course, faith and reason complement one another. The second one is to the university cannot exist outside the community in the world, and surely, coming from the global perspective, I truly believe that both the present and the future, that educators have a lot to contribute, to the world community, to the local community, and to the national community. And so, because the university cannot exist outside, that local, national, and global, I think that the second dimension is to engage the local community and to engage the national community, and to engage the resources and the truths that emerge from outside of the university and from outside the church, within society, because all those truths too have to be welcomed and engaged in a university. And the third is that more global perspective, because truths do not only emerge within our borders but also outside of our borders. As we were saying before, it's important to take a different perspective in the landscape, and so. In engaging faith and cultural issues, we have to look at culture in the broadest sense of the term, and look at the cultures of the world, and the peoples of the world, and the truths that emerge from different parts of the world, that not only are we called to examine and consider, but that we have an obligation to do so for the sake of the common good. I think that the best of our Catholic tradition, the best of the formation that has made me into the person that I have become and I'm becoming, invites me to pursue that kind of, reasoned approach to the world that surrounds me.
I want to thank you for being with us, for the questions that you have answered with such intelligence and knowledge. I think it's been excellent for everybody who will be watching this, and thank all of you for coming and being a part of this as well.